Every night before sleeping, the Prophet Muhammad would bring his palms together, gently blow into them, and recite 3 specific chapters of the Qur'an. He would then wipe his hands over his body. This physical sequence deployed a specific, interlocking taxonomy of human vulnerability. When the final 2 chapters of this sequence, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah An-Nas, were first revealed, historical accounts describe the Prophet experiencing profound relief and liberation. He told his companions they would never recite anything quite like them. These 2 chapters provide an exact chart of every form of threat and its corresponding divine protection. The Qur'an addresses the concept of evil by dividing reality into 2 distinct theaters of operation, an external perimeter and an internal core. The first domain is the interactive physical environment around us. This is the territory governed by Surah Al-Falaq. The second domain is the unseen, psychological operating system within the human mind. This is the territory of Surah An-Nas. We can visualize this structure as a 2-hemisphere map. On the left is the external perimeter, where manifest threats operate. On the right is the internal core, representing the human psyche. Approaching the text as a structured psychological system demonstrates exactly how its theology responds to each vector of attack. Looking closely at the external perimeter, the defense begins by invoking a specific divine attribute. I seek refuge in the Rabb of the Falaq. The word Falaq literally translates to daybreak, but its root refers to the power that splits anything into existence and life, like a seed cleaving open or dawn cutting through the darkness. It is the active force of creation pushing back the void. Against that light, the surah maps its first external threat, Al-Ghāsiq idhā waqab, the darkening night when it settles. This represents physical predators, treacherous intruders, and the psychological weight of the unknown that nightfall brings. The text then identifies a second threat in the external environment, the An-Naffāthāt, or those who blow upon knots, a practice associated with sorcery. This commentary defines sorcery as a force operating without altering physical reality. It deceives senses and manipulates emotions. Highlighting the blue text from Surah Taha, the Qur'an confirms the Pharaoh's magician's ropes only seemed to move. It was a psychological illusion designed to strike fear. Finally, the surah maps the third external threat, the envier when he envies. This is defined as a directed psychological impulse, an inner agitation aimed at the removal of someone else's blessing. Historical phenomena like telepathy and documented uses of mass hypnosis demonstrate that unseen psychological forces can exert visible control over human behavior, even if the exact mechanism remains hidden to modern testing. Surah Al-Falaq secures the external environment by invoking the God who cleaves the dawn to neutralize these 3 outward threats. This definition of external psychological manipulation brings us to a historical controversy surrounding the text. Several narrations claim that a man named Lubayd cast a spell on the Prophet Muhammad, causing him to imagine actions he had not actually performed. Focusing on the final text blocks of this page, the commentary argues these specific accounts are dismissed. They clash with the Qur'an's explicit denial that the Prophet was ever bewitched, a charge originally leveled by the disbelievers. More importantly, these stories contradict the theological principle of isma, or prophetic infallibility. If a prophet's perception of reality can be successfully hijacked, the reliability of his transmission is compromised. This requires an epistemological filter. These stories are ahad, reports of solitary transmission. They do not meet the criteria of mass transmission required to override a foundational Quranic axiom like prophetic infallibility. By prioritizing theological bedrock over isolated anecdotes, the integrity of the prophetic mission remains impenetrable. Some threats entirely bypass the external perimeter and spawn directly inside the mind. For that, we turn to the right hemisphere of our map, the internal core, or sudur. Notice the structural shift. Surah Al-Falaq invoked 1 divine attribute against 3 external evils. Surah An-Nas deploys 3 distinct layers of divine defense against 1 singular threat. The text invokes the Rabb, the nurturing guardian, the Malik, the sovereign ruler, and the Ilah, the God who holds absolute dominion. Because the threat here is invisible, operating secretly from within the psyche, where normal physical defenses cannot perceive it, the text mandates a triple-layered divine armor. The text identifies the mechanism behind this internal breach, the Waswas Al-Khannas. This table breaks down the linguistics of the threat. Waswasa refers to a hidden, insinuating voice. It is the quietest suggestion planted in the mind. Al-Khannas translates to withdrawal and stealthy concealment. This exposes the enemy's tactic. It creeps forward to plant the suggestion, but instantly retreats into hiding, waiting for the host to become heedless again. The text specifies that this whisperer emerges from both the jinn and mankind. Human whisperers include corrupt companions who normalize malice, and the entourage that encourages a ruler toward tyranny and the destruction of cultivation and progeny. Because these human actors infiltrate the channels of instinct, their creeping is subtle, necessitating absolute reliance on divine protection. When we bring both halves of this taxonomic map together, the complete architecture of refuge becomes clear. The tri-layered shield of An-Nas locks down the internal core, while the active light of Al-Falaq pushes back the physical external perimeter. Together, these surahs form a dynamic equilibrium. One secures the environment, the other secures the internal operating system. This structure also exposes a paradox. The intense stealth of the Khannas, its constant need to hide and retreat, is the proof of its weakness. The entity possesses no independent power to force action. It only operates in the psychological vacuum created by human heedlessness. This is an ancient, ongoing war for human agency. The adversary was granted permission to incite humanity, creating a timeless psychological maze. Yet despite the relentless nature of this struggle, the human being is never left unarmed. The text establishes that goodness is sustained by the ultimate reality of the Creator, the Rabb, the Malik, and the Ilah. This highlighted section of the commentary demonstrates that evil depends entirely on a whisperer who is weak in direct confrontation. It retreats at the moment of encounter and is defeated by the act of seeking refuge in God. Evil, in this architectural model, is an illusion of power. It is a fragile framework that collapses the very moment the human mind becomes alert and invokes the ultimate reality of its creator.